allows same-sex couples to attend services at Anglican churches, including receiving God's blessing after a legal marriage ceremony. In a joint statement, the Archbishops of Canterbury and York said it had been a long road to get to this point. The position on gay marriage, though, hasn't changed. Same-sex couples aren't allowed to actually marry in church. Now, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has addressed an EU summit in Brussels. He's lobbying leaders to provide more weapons to Ukraine in the fight against Russia, which he's referred to as the biggest anti-European force of the modern world. Number 10 says it won't send fighter jets to Ukraine if that puts the UK at risk, though. The Foreign and Defence Secretaries are currently in Rome meeting their Italian counterparts to discuss ways of galvanising support for Ukraine. The government's announced new legislation that forces social housing landlords to fix damp and mould. Awab's law comes following the death of 2-year-old Awab Ishak, which was directly caused by damp and mould in his home managed by Rochdale Borough-wide Housing. The Housing Secretary, Michael Gove, says landlords who drag their feet will face the full force of the law. Ambulance crews across England have improved their response times for reaching people who dial 999. New NHS England data shows paramedics reached emergencies such as heart attacks and strokes an hour quicker last month than they did in December 2022. They took just over 32 minutes on average, compared with more than 90 the month before. However, the response time is still well above the target of 18 minutes. And finally, Burt Bacharach, one of pop music's greatest ever composers, has died at the age of 94. He wrote hits like I Say a Little Prayer and Walk On By, as well as movie themes, including What's New Pussycat and The Look of Love. His publicist says Burt Bacharach died surrounded by his family at his LA home on Wednesday. That's it. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Back now to Dewbs & Co.
Thanks for that, Polly. Well, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through till 7 o'clock this evening. Alongside me, Martin Daubney, the journalist and the former Brexit Party MEP, and Peter Edwards, the former editor of Labour List. Good evening, gentlemen. And you know the drill, don't you? It's not just about us three here in the studio. It's very much about you at home. What's on your mind tonight? What do you think to the stories that we'll be discussing? Should we have a referendum about bringing back the death penalty? Where do you stand on that? This whole kind of cut-off when it comes to child benefit of 2 kids, is that fair? Some saying it's immoral, and actually it should just go on and on and on. As many kids as you want, you will be able to get child benefit for. Should you or not? And does it matter if not an equal number of women are trying to get onto science, maths and technology courses as men? What is this obsession with equality? Am I missing something? Is the world not going to be a good place if not enough women are studying those subjects? I want your thoughts on all of that and more. First up, though, gents, this is not on my agenda, but I can't help but just get your opinions on it. The MP pay rise today, 2.9%. What do you think to that? Support that? Do you think it was enough?
No, I don't support it particularly. I can't see the basis for it. We're constantly being told there's unprecedented pressure on public finances. So, of course, inflation has been very high, but the starting point of around 84K is quite a significant amount of money. So why increase it further at this particular time?
Oh, you're a hard man, Peter Edwards. No, then. Do you support this, 2.9%?
I would argue that MPs should be paid more. And that's because I think the political class is largely filled with people who can afford to be MPs. It costs tens of thousands to get elected because you have to do it voluntarily. You don't get paid until you get elected. So a great many people can afford to do it because they're already of good means. They can campaign themselves. They don't get paid to campaign. So as a consequence...
No, but you normally get a donor or a backer.
Not necessarily. No,
Say if you're standing for a party, more often than not, your party would be funding that. If you're talking about independence, then largely people would go and get someone to support them, back them.
Yeah, but you have to make the shortlist first, and so people have to give up their existing career. And I think generally we either have a political class who graduate and go straight into work experience and never really done a decent or honest day's work in their life.
Before you'd got on the shortlist.
Beg your pardon?
Why would you give your job up before you'd got on the shortlist?
Well,
or been selected as a candidate?
What I'm saying is, you know, generally speaking, we don't attract the best talent to politics because there's far better ways of earning a living. I got paid more as a magazine editor than I ever did as a politician. And I think that's the state of play.
What do you think their salary should be then?
100k.
100k.
They'll probably go down badly, but I think if you want the best talent, you've got to pay.
So it was about 84. It's now about 86. You've had both. I've got to say, you surprised me on that. I would have thought that you'd have been batting for it, saying give them more. I just kind of think, actually, the optics of it look wrong at this moment in time. I think that 84 is enough, isn't it, for the next year or so? I'm sure you could live on that. Give me your thoughts, though. Did I tell you how to get in touch with me, by the way, in case you're a newbie to the show? You can email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email address, or you can tweet me at Michelle Dewbs. If Twitter is your thing, by the way, I'm running a poll right now asking you a very simple question. Do you support a return to the death penalty? Yes or no? The reason I'm asking you this is because Lee Anderson, we all know who he is. He's the deputy chairman now of the Tory party. There was an article that he's done recently, which I have to make clear he did do before he was appointed to the position of chair of the Tory party. And he was saying basically that he wouldn't be opposed to seeing a return to the death penalty. And as he explains himself, nobody has ever committed a crime after being executed. Makes sense to me. Peter, are you in favour of it?
No, not at all. I think it's barbaric, and I think Lee Anderson's justification, no one's ever committed a crime after being killed by the state, is a really foolish one. I don't think it's the state's...
True.
I think it's well, lots of things are true, but not necessarily good ideas. I think it's not the state's role to kill people. To me, the primary role of prison is not about punishment. It's about keeping everyone else safe, the law-abiding public. Clearly, it's obviously very difficult to rehabilitate some people, but it would just be going back 50 or 100 years in time. I know very few people that are proposing it. And the other point that Lee Anderson hasn't really addressed is that there are miscarriages of justice. So can he give a 100% guarantee that juries will reach the correct verdicts in all future murder cases? Of course he can't.
Yeah, that's very nice. I don't agree with you, by the way, saying that the primary purpose of prison should be rehabilitation. Primary purpose, I thought that's what you said.
The primary should be keep other people safe.
Right. Don't you think the primary purpose of a prison should be to punish the person? And we talk about rehabilitation. Do you accept that some people are just out-and-out wrong-uns? They are beyond rehabilitation?
Yeah, some people are beyond rehabilitation at the more serious end of the offending spectrum, absolutely.
What's the point in keeping them in prison, then?
Because the alternative is killing them, and I think that's completely barbaric. And it is, to me, the primary purpose is to keep the 60-odd or more million people who are law-abiding, like all of us, safe. That should be the main motivation of prison. Martin
Daubney, please tell me you're going to speak sense and say, yes, let's get the death penalty back.
Well, Lee Anderson, the Ashfield Anvil, the Red Wall Rottweiler, he's a pal of mine, actually. I stood against him in Ashfield in the election in 2019. I wanted to beat him, but I was the first to shake his hand when he thrashed me. Now he's the deputy chair. He's certainly ruffling a lot of feathers. And what he does, he kind of puts the Wetherspoons into Westminster. This is the conversation that happens all over working-class Britain, and there's very much a feeling of who does society support, the victim or the perpetrator of a crime. Now, Lee was careful with his words, or that's been lost, the nuance has been lost in the media reporting, of course. Now, he was saying in irrefutable cases, such as the murder of Lee Rigby, where there's video evidence, he would support a return. And actually, that is not a minority position. The latest figures we have on this are from YouGov in March of last year, and 58% of people support multiple murderers being executed, 54% terrorists, and 52% support child murderers being executed. So this is not an extreme minority position.
But do you agree with
actually,
it?
Brits do. I personally don't agree with the death penalty. I have a sister who lives in Texas. spent a lot of time in America. I've been in America where people have been executed. I don't think it's the way we should be going. But I do think we should be allowed a debate about this, because we're not allowed a debate about anything at the moment. Net zero, trans issues, immigration.
You are on GB News. That's exactly what we're debating.
That's why it's the fastest growing TV channel. But the fact of the matter is, Lee is a wrecking ball. And I think we should be having these conversations. Will we get a referendum? No chance. The last time they gave us one, they didn't get the result they wanted. They'll never let us have a referendum on this. I don't think we'll ever see it. And it won't be Tory party policy. Rishi Sunak has already today come out and said, no way, I don't agree with Lee. But Lee is having those conversations. He's pushing the envelope and he's making the Tory feel like a landing place for people who are, as you would call it, old-fashioned right-wing.
I think when you've got a situation where somebody is beyond all doubt, you can see that they've done this hideous crime, you've got the DNA evidence, you've probably got video evidence, there is no conceivable way that this person is not guilty. And you've got this whole life tariff now, this whole life term, so you're going to be in prison for the rest of your days. I think there's about 70-odd people in this country that fit into that bracket. They are people like Wayne Couzens, people like Michael, how do I pronounce it? Adebolaji, the guy that killed Lee Rigby, the person that killed Joe Cox. These kind of people, they're never coming out. So what is the point? And this is, to me, I perhaps would certainly be in favour of a referendum on this issue, and then I would respect the result. I just cannot get my head around about £48,000 per annum, on average, it costs to keep someone incarcerated, probably more when you get to the higher security end of prisons. What is the point in spending that money? It's a waste, isn't it?
Well, the cases you highlighted are horrendous, and I think we've always got to be conscious that the pain for bereaved families goes on every day. They face their own life sentence if they've lost someone, even perhaps after the newspaper coverage has been dialed down. But I'm not God, and the state is not God, and it's not the state's role to play God. And I don't believe, even if there's 100% certainty about a verdict, that it's the state's role to kill people.
The interesting thing about the cost of it, because Lee talks about the cost of keeping these people in prison, the cost to keep Lee Rigby's killers a 45-year term and an entire life term is about £6 million for just their 2 lives, just to keep them in jail, £6 million. I think people have a right to say, or to ask the question, is that really how we should be spending our money? The problem, of course, is when you look to America, is it actually a deterrent? Well, there are many, many people on death row who are evidence of the fact it doesn't deter. In the UK, I've spent time in Category A jails. I go in and give seminars on men's issues, and I've met killers, I've met serial killers, and I've asked them, would a death penalty put you off? And they say no. Because a lot of the guys who did premeditated murder, they said, I would do it again. A lot of them don't regret doing it because they were crimes of passion, they were crimes of revenge. It's very, very complex, and it's very, very nuanced. And while I think the feeling of immediate justice is tempting, isn't it better to let these 2 extremists rot in jail forever than have their martyrdom?
No, I would say, because probably all the time that they're in prison, I wouldn't put it past them to be able in some way to be able to influence up-and-coming, aspiring terrorists.
It's a fair point.
I don't believe that you can literally lock these people in a box, never let them communicate ever again with anyone. I'm sure that they are able to communicate. So for me personally, no, actually, I don't think it's better to just leave them languishing. I would say you clearly don't respect human rights. You know, if you're going to do what you did, I don't need to go over it. It's tea time. I think you'll all remember that awful situation of Lee Rigby. If you want to do that, you clearly don't respect human rights. So off you go. The flaw in the plan with some of these people, though, is they will probably think they're going to some paradise that's littered with virgins or whatever it is there, so they probably would quite like that. So that would be a bit of a flaw in my plan. Anyway, the European Convention of Human Rights, when we're a member of that, which we currently are, you're not allowed to be able to bring back the death penalty anyway. So isn't that, if someone is in favour of this, isn't that an argument, another argument, for leaving the Convention for Human Rights?
To me, this issue is about justice, and it transcends the EU and the debate around that, and it even transcends money. And I'm sorry if I'm a broken record, it's not the state's role to kill people.
Well, I would say, really. Let me ask you guys at home, is there any more sense lurking among the viewers? Because I think it's quite a good idea to have a referendum, but I am making it clear the European Convention of Human Rights would mean that we're not able to bring it back at all, currently, as things stand. Pete says, well done again, Lee Anderson. You would go a bit further, Pete, so I might leave it there, but I get your gist. Oliver says the death penalty should be reintroduced for murderers and rapists. I like this next bit, actually, Oliver, and I agree with you, you're a sensible person. The victim's next of kin should be given the option to decide whether the guilty or not should face execution. I think that's very fair. Martin says, absolutely not. You cannot trust the police in any way, so they could fit up the wrong person. Susan says yes, yes, and once again, yes. Peter said, I would definitely like the death penalty to be reinstated. For what crimes, though? Tell me. And Mary says, absolutely, definitely. This country is way too lenient and soft. Very briefly, by the way, do you think Lee Anderson is the right person for this role?
Yes, I think it's an excellent choice. He balances off the other appointment of Mr Hands, who's a Remainer, a very shyer Tory. He's a red wall. Lee is a red wall Rottweiler, as I said. He's making people from working class environments feel welcome in the party, and he's also neutralising, I think, the threats of other smaller parties. I think it's an excellent appointment.
Do you agree?
Not particularly. I think some of these views we've been talking about tonight from Lee Anderson are a bit foolish, but I also think in time he may become a bit of a liability for Rishi Sunak, whose style of communicating is a world away from that of Lee Anderson.
But don't you need to be able to reach across kind of breadth of person, and therefore some styles of communication might reach that bunch of people, and then actually Lee Anderson's style of communication might actually engage a different group of people that perhaps not massively engaged with politics in the first place?
Totally.
Yeah, but I think we've got to be clear about what we mean. Is it about class? For example, Tony Blair from quite a comfortable background, governed alongside John Prescott, was from a very poor background. Is it about geography and the red wall? Is it about the job you've done before entering Parliament? It's good to have a range, and Lee Anderson's entitled to his views, as daft as I think they are, but, there's nothing that he's said so far that impresses me, and I doubt there will be.
Surely it's about diversity of opinion. We talk about diversity all the time, yet there's a monoculture of how we're allowed to think about things like net zero, transgender, immigration. Lee is setting out his stall. Rishi Sunak's already disagreed. Isn't it healthy to have a broad church of opinion within one party rather than you must toe the party line? That's what I would say.
Well, what do you make to him?
Monoculture. Sorry.
There is?
No, I was just about to say to my guys and ladies at home, what do you make to Lee Anderson? Does he turn you off politics or perhaps engage you in it? Let me know your thoughts. When I come back from my break, did you know it's apprenticeship week this week? No, I hear you say, well, you do now. And get this, according to the Labour Party, it's going to take a very long time indeed before the number of women applying to go into what you call STEM, so like your science and maths, technology, whatever, will be the same as the number of men applying to those subjects. And I just want to ask you, and what? Does that matter? If so, why? Give me your thoughts. I'll see you in 2.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching. Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Are authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime? With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewbs and I'm with you right through till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, Martin Daubney, the journalist and former Brexit Party MEP, and Peter Edwards, the former editor of Labour List. Welcome back, everybody. Lots of you would be in favour of the referendum for the death penalty. I'm asking you on your Twitter as well. I'm doing a quick poll. Give me your yes or no answer and I'll have the response at the end of the show. David said yes in capitals. I think any person who has committed an outrageous crime loses the right to be considered a human being. But who decides, though, what an outrageous crime is, David? There might be a difference there. And who would get the final say? You give me your thoughts on that. Cool, blimey, Phil, are you looking for a bit of work? He says, 100% bring it back. I would even offer my services and be the hangman and I would do it for free. But Graham, he's not having any of that because he says the challenge when it comes to death penalty is the effect that it would have on the staff that have to administer it. It can be traumatic. You speak there like someone that's got a bit of experience, Graham. Ginny says, I'm all for the death penalty for killers of people like Lee Rigby, i.e. when there are no doubts we can play God with other species. Why not humans? I must ask you the question I just asked myself, though, a minute ago. For some of those people, I think they might quite like the idea of being killed so that they can go off into their so-called paradise. What about that situation, then? Isn't that counterproductive? Give me your thoughts. Anyway, Labour has released research showing on current trends it would take, get this, 22 years to get the same amount of women as men into STEM subjects. What is STEM? Science, tech, engineering and maths. Let me cut straight to the chase, right? Why does this matter, Peter?
To me, it's not about quotas, it's about good decision-making in the economy that works. So, to give one example, the banking crisis in 2008, there were lots of different reasons for that, you know, from regulation to risk to pay and so on. But one of the strands of that put forward was there was an enormous preponderance of men making key decisions in executive boardrooms and actually having something close to a gender balance. We don't have to be too mathematical about it, but a bit more balance gives you access to a range of views, but also access to a range of skill sets, and you might make better decisions as a result. So, of course, training the next generation, and of course, this is everything, presumably, from building aeroplanes to teaching science in schools, to have better female representation seems a great idea.
But then, do you think it should be a choice, i.e. girls, if you want to go into that, off you go, or do you think it should be more engineered?
Well, it's always going to be a choice for individuals because we can all choose what to study at A-levels or if we're lucky enough to go to university and so on. But there are government targets across pretty much everything in society, from crime to sport to waiting lists to education. It's the idea that you have a central target, even if you don't hit it, from which some behavioural change follows, is a good thing. And targets tend to be proposed by governments of all strands.
What do you think to this, Martin? Do you think, as a woman, I mean, by the way, just as a disclosure, I am a woman, I think. Last time I checked, I mean, I think I can still say that. And my professional career, it has been in STEM. So I've always worked in IT. I've always been pretty much, I would say, the only girl. It didn't bother me one jot. I used to have a right good time, lots of banter, never felt kind of, oh, I need more girls to be around me or anything like that. Does it matter if girls are underrepresented in that sector?
No, because it's about freedom of choice. And the funny thing is, when you look at the gender equality paradox, the societies typically with the most choice and the most equality on the planet, Finland, Sweden, Norway, they have a very, very low take-up of women choosing STEM subjects. Whereas when you look at places like Oman and Morocco, where they are very patriarchal, they have the highest take-up on the planet. And now why is that? Quite simply, because to have financial independence and not be reliant upon men is beneficial in countries like Oman, whereas where you have a fair childcare system, equality, well-paid and cheap childcare for women, they tend not to go into STEM studies. And so, therefore, when we look at choice, it should be about that. And when we also look at what women do choose to do, 75% of teachers are women, 60% of vets are women, 80% of psychiatrists are women, 90% of midwives are women. Great. But we never hear for equality drives to get more men into those services, where we probably should.
What do you think we should? Do you think there should be an equality push or whatever?
When I first got into politics as a campaigning journalist on men's issues and looking at the lack of father figures in the previous item about the boom in knife crime, absent father figures is a huge driving issue. And there's loads and loads of evidence to show that putting positive male role models into those boys' lives has a huge beneficial effect for all of society, lowering crime, lowering addiction, less teenage pregnancies. And if you've got more male teachers, that would be a positive intervention. I've been in Parliament, I've sat down with politicians, I've written endless articles on this, and to date in the UK, there are precisely 0 campaigns for this because it would be sexist. So what I'm saying is, you can't cherry pick where we have these equality drives, leave it to freedom of choice. And when we do that, women in the West are less likely to choose STEM subjects.
Yeah, see, I'm all about choice, but I also think there's something, Peter, because I would always say if I had my time again, my career again, I would have been a trader in the city. But the flaw in the plan, for me, I was at school in Hull, I didn't even know the city was a thing. I didn't know about stocks and shares trading. It was just, I just didn't know anything about that. So I believe that you can't be what you can't see. So whilst I absolutely believe in choice and individual choice, and I don't agree with this, you know, silly, one guy there, so one girl there, please. I don't agree with any of that, and I don't agree with quotas. I do think we've got to get better at showing all kids, not just girls, but all kids, these are the opportunities that can await you if you want to go into them.
Well, there's nothing the Labour Party have proposed today that would restrict choice. It's about trying to open up choice. But I like the ideas in it, the phrase you used. I think it was what you can't see.
What you can't see, you can't be.
Because it is about opportunities. You know, for example, when I went to university 20 years ago and studied English literature, which is not particularly blokish, reading a lot of poems.
Very romantic, though.
To a certain extent. But also, I was able to do that, perhaps because I came from a fairly comfortable family. 20 years on, where the fees are much, much, much higher. And if you're from a poorer household, the way you choose your course is going to be totally different, because thinking, well, 3 or 4 years reading a lot of poems is very intellectually enriching, but if you've got 50 grand of debt at the end of it all, and then you need to buy a house. So I think where you come from, what you can see, as you put it, in your background is just as important.
Yeah, but that's not about gender, is it? That's about equality of background. Like, if you're working class, you're much less likely to go to university. I'm a coal miner's son, I made it. But back in the day when I went to university, there was a full grant. I wouldn't do that now. I doubt I would go down that route, because the prospects of taking on a 50 grand debt, to me, would be stratospheric.
Some subjects, they should be charged. I mean, as a taxpayer, no offence to you, Peter, I don't really want to be subsidising you to sit there learning poems to go serenade whoever with in your spare time.
I should say that's not the purpose of an English degree.
All right. Well, if that's what you want to do and you want to learn your poems and all the rest of it, do it on your dime. So I think you should have fees and things like that for those types of courses. We digress a little bit, and I must say, I can't end this segment because it is National Apprentice Week, and I feel that apprenticeships get a little bit of an unfair rap. I think that there's a bit of a stigma sometimes about young people choosing apprenticeships over going to university, and I must say, you know, out of everything I've done in my life, I did what we used to call a YTS. I think they'd changed their name, but we still call them that. I did an apprenticeship in business administration, and honestly, it set me on my path to achieve things in business. So anyone that's got a young kid who doesn't know what to do as a next step, I highly, highly recommend a modern apprenticeship. So I do. Anyway, I'm going to take a quick break. When I come back, I'll have some of your thoughts on that. I also want to talk to you as well about net zero. Are you being asked to make too many changes, do you think, to your life when countries like India, China are doing whatever they want, quite frankly? And also, it's been suggested today that capping the number of children that you can receive benefit for is basically immoral and unfair. Should we be able to just have as many children as we want and keep on receiving child benefit for them? Currently, the limit for new children is 2. Give me your thoughts and I'll see you in 2.
He's the king of breakfast TV and he's back.
Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh,
already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewbs, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one.
Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Dewbs and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewbs, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This Saturday at 8 p.m, tune in to a GB News Investigates documentary as we tell the full story of the grooming gang scandal.
My childhood has been stolen.
We will expose the cover-ups that have kept this national scandal under wraps for decades.
Not one person has been held accountable.
Our investigation uncovers the true scale of this outrage.
I want to see senior officials held legally to account.
On GB News, grooming gangs, Britain's shame.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewbs, and I'm keeping you company until 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, Martin Daubney is the journalist and former Brexit Party MEP, and Peter Edwards is the former editor of Labour List. Welcome back, everybody. Tim has been in touch, saying there should never be quotas. We were just talking, in case you've just joined us, about how much effort we need to put into getting women into, like, science and tech. Does it matter about equality? Tim says there should never be quotas. If quotas are to make sense, then it should be applied to things like bricklayers as well. They seem to be about 90-odd% male. Yes, it does matter, says Philip. Well, look at GPs. When women get to an age when they want to start a family, a high percentage want to work part-time. But with a lot of engineering jobs, you have to be there full-time. Philip, you know, when you do STEM, for example, you could do IT. So as a woman, you could become an IT contractor. You would earn a small fortune and you would be able to work from home. And we all know how popular that is these days. Paul, why should the Labour Party be concerned about how long it can take a woman when it comes to STEM? They should totally be focused on the state of the country instead of trivialities. Paul, celebrate quick wins where we get them. I mean, the fact that they can define a woman in this instance, I'm taking that as a positive. Anyway, Jeremy Corbyn, he's been speaking in Parliament again, this time about child benefit. And I can tell you, it's really divided opinion. He says it's unfair that the child benefit that you get, it basically cuts off after you've had 2 children recently anyway. Previously, you could get it for more. And it's really, he's saying it's immoral in essence. Martin Daubney, the way it works now is if you've had your children before, what is the date? 2017, you get it for more children. But for children after that, you have a cap at 2. Your first one you get a bit more for, your second one you get a bit less for, and that's it. Is that right?
I think it is. So I've got 2 kids, and when it came to have my second child, I really, really thought long and hard about, can I afford this? Can I afford a second child? I'm really grateful that I did have my beautiful daughter, Dolly, who's probably watching. Love you, darling. But I just think that we have this split of position on those who work hard and pay their way and those who expect the state to pay their way. And I think Jeremy Corbyn, quelle surprise, wants more people dependent on the state, more people to vote for Labour Party because they're getting handouts. And I think it sets a bad precedent. We see this rolling into public housing stock, council housing stock. And I think there's a huge problem with benefit dependency in the UK. We have 8 million people currently not in work. And I think setting a dependency culture at an early age sets a template for life. And I don't think we should be going down this route. I think where we are at the moment is just about right.
So just in case you're wondering, for your first child, you get £21.80 a week. For your second child, you get £14.45. And then that's your lot. What do you think to it, Peter?
I think Martin's language is appalling. And I think to use words like dependency and imply a culture of fecklessness and living off the state is completely inappropriate.
You don't think that happens?
I didn't interrupt you. So I think, having a child is a gift from God. There's tons of challenges, and I think new parents, but especially new mums, work incredibly hard, often on duty 24 hours a day. This was a policy that was too right-wing even for Margaret Thatcher, and it was the Tories in the 21st century that brought it in, and it's a relatively small sum, and I think it's a cruel policy.
He says you're a little bit out of order with your language.
Not especially bothered if you're offended by my language. I'm more bothered about keeping the balance and checks of the fiscal bill. I mean, we're in record amounts of debt. And this idea that we should just extend benefit dependency and the cost of living to mums, I think is out of step with the time. But then again, what you expect from Corbynomics? Well, it was founded on the magic money tree, and that's what this is now. And unfortunately, we have a Tory government which believes in the same sort of endless giveaway policies. And what we should be doing is, I'm all for people making the right informed decisions and getting tax breaks, for example, to have children. It's a different thing. Not taking money away from people as opposed to giving money away, I think, is where we're at. We shouldn't be giving more handouts out in today's day and age. I think it sends out the wrong message.
I mean, the premise of what you say is wrong in so many areas. So, for example, I'm not a Corbynite, and what I'm saying, I think, was basically similar to what people like Tony Blair and John Major said about there weren't these restrictions on child benefit them, and Tony Blair and John Major weren't crazy lefties. And you use the word dependency repeatedly as well.
Yeah.
Who can live on £20 a week? Put your hand up.
Well, you get a free house on top. And you don't
get a free house for child benefit.
So hang on.
Don't get a free house for having child benefit.
So if you're a single mother, for example, and you're on benefits, for example, and you get a council house, and then the state is bankrolling you having more and more children, how is that fair to working parents who are thinking long and hard about even having a solitary child in this day and age? It's unfair.
That's not the question we're talking about. We haven't made any reference to whether or not the parent is in work. You're borrowing are basically dog whistle language from the right to support your point. But we're not talking about whether the parent's in employment. We're talking about the costs to the state and the rights of the child.
And by the way, just to be clear, you do get your child benefit if you work as well. But once you start getting up to about, I think it's about 50 odd grand, then you start to lose some of your entitlements. Why do you find the concept of benefit dependency offensive, or whatever word you just used?
Yeah, I didn't use the word offensive, but I do think it's wrong to use the word dependency in this context, because I think, as you said, Michelle, child benefit up to a certain salary threshold is universal. There's no moral judgment made on it. It goes to one-parent family, a two-parent family, whether you're in work or not, and then it tapers off for higher earners. But just to finish that point briefly, there's a separate often very ferocious debate in politics about, that does centre around dependency, and I think George Osborne, who was Chancellor, really fuelled that. But I think trying to import that into a simple discussion about child benefit is wrong.
So let me ask you this very briefly. Aside from child benefit, let's park child benefit very briefly over there. Do you think that people should be a little bit more considerate of financial planning and means whilst considering how many children to have? Do you think your finances should be a factor?
I think finances should be a factor when we plan for family. But what I'd say, and I think what applies to millions and millions of people, is lots of children are unplanned, and those children are still loved, and those children still have the same rights whether or not they're planned.
Yeah, but we also can have birth control. What I'm saying is if we have a situation where it is financially beneficial to have more children if you're on benefits, which we do have, and to deny that benefit dependency is an issue is I think, to live in denial of reality.
Well, I haven't.
If you talk to people in places like Ashfield, where my mum has lived for 25 years, there is an absolute feeling that work doesn't pay. It pays to be on benefits. Many people are on benefits on the same amount of money as working.
Which leads me to a good point. I have to go to break, but before I do, very quickly, do you agree that there should be a cap to what you can receive in benefits? I'm talking benefit plural, not
as a household,
single one. Yeah.
Personally, I'd like to get Britain back to a state of prosperity where that can be removed, but we're not there yet.
I don't understand what you mean. If someone's on benefits, do you think there should be a cap as to what they can receive in handouts from the state?
But for the last 80 years, there wasn't. It's a fairly
No, I don't care about 80 years. I'm asking now going forward. Today, in today's society, do you think there should be a cap on how much people can receive from the government in handouts?
I'd like to see it removed when Britain is wealthier.
So you think that someone can be potentially wealthier at home, not working, than someone who goes out to work and grafts?
No, I didn't say that at all.
But if you remove the cap, that's what you would achieve?
Well, offer your evidence.
This boils down
to basic common sense.
It boils down to those on the political left, and I include myself in that. I used to be a Labour voter for 20 years, want more state dependency, more state control, more state involvement, more reliance upon the state, and those on the Conservative side want more self-agency.
Well, you tell me at home, what do you make to this? Do you think it's a bit harsh not to allow people a child benefit beyond 2 children? And I want to ponder as well that last point I just put to Peter. You can think about that during the break and tell me your answers. Do you think we should have a cap for the amount of overall benefits a household can receive? I certainly do. But you give me your thoughts and I'll see you in 2.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, welcome back to Dewbs and Co. I'm keeping you company right through till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, Martin Daubney, the journalist and former Brexit Party MEP, and Peter Edwards, the former editor of Labour List. You guys have been in touch in your droves. Rob says, yes, there should be a cap on the number of children that a mother or family can have a claim for. Bit harsh on your next line there, Rob. You say professional baby factories should not be a career choice. Cool, blimey. I'm one of 6, by the way. Christopher says, if you choose to have a child, that's up to you to look after them. I've got a dog. What? And I don't expect government's help for her. So don't automatically expect help just because you've got 2, 3, 4 or more children. Christopher, I hate to break it to you though, my friend. The dogs are not going to... Well, actually, I say they're not, but going forward, it's not the dogs you need to keep civilization going in this country, is it? We're not going to be progressing very much if we run out of children to keep the population going. Even if we do still have our dogs. Jenny says scrap child benefit and give all kids free school dinners and uniforms. No one should be given child benefit. If you can't have kids, don't afford them. Stephen says you should get child benefit for 1 child just because you're starting out. And after that, if you want more kids, you should foot the bill. By the way, lots of people saying if you can't afford kids, don't have them. Let me ask you this, though. What about if your circumstances change? I don't know, say you're married, you've got 3 kids, your husband passes away. What then? You tell me. Anyway, look at the time. It flies, doesn't it, when you're having fun? Let's talk net zero then before I go, shall we? Because I can't help but notice we have been asked to make quite a lot of changes into our lives at this moment in time and definitely going forward in the pursuit of net zero, whether it's cars, whether it's extra taxes on various different things, eating less meat, wood burners, you know, whatever. Are these micro changes to our lives really needed when you've got China setting up more coal mines and India doing whatever they want, etc.?
I think any government that sets up a department of net zero deserves to net zero votes at the next election from the working class communities, who are the hardest hit by what is a luxury belief system. In terms of the proportion of revenue that we spend on staying alive, especially on heating at the moment, net zero is hammering the working classes. What we should be doing is investing more in our own energy sovereignty. We should be relying on the future beneath our feet, shale, coal. We've imported 39% more coal in the last quarter than before because renewables cannot keep the lights on. There's no sun at the moment, there's no wind at the moment when we need the most power. It's the same in Germany. They've upped the ante. 4 coal power stations in the UK are currently firing up and on standby to keep the lights on. And then we look at how politicians pick our pockets. ULEZ, Sadiq Khan's scheme in London, which is going to roll out nationwide. You watch it. All the bad ideas start in London, then they end up elsewhere. Netting £300 million with his August expansion. It's already netted £96 million when it expanded it last time. That's almost £500 million a year, pickpocketed, highway robbed off motorists who can least afford it. Rich people buy electric car. Diesel vans, white van man, they're getting hammered by this system, and it's driving the working class to poverty. And the left used to care about the working class, now they're bleeding them dry.
Is that fair, Peter?
Well, you don't need to guess. Martin can do all the talking for both of us. In terms of net zero, I think it's good that we all use a bit less energy. Hopefully it's good for our wallets and good for the planet as well. I think my worry is what you alluded to at the start, that I think it's right that we all do our bit and it's right that Britain does its bit. But if China is building the equivalent, I think it's of 1 coal-fired power station a day on average, it's a global problem and it's a bit of a Gordon Brownism. It needs a global solution.
But don't you think we're being pushed a little bit too far? Like when you read about schools, I want to say it's in Edinburgh, I think it is, where you can't eat meat now because this is all about helping to protect the planet. Don't you think, come on now, you're just being a bit daft?
I'm very surprised at that, and I think it's important to give kids choice. I haven't eaten meat for about 20-odd years.
Yes, but you're not a developing child.
Yeah, no, exactly. But that's my point. I wouldn't want to force that on other people, especially a young one. So I'm a bit surprised by that. Ultimately, saving the planet, eating less meat will help. But I think it is our energy usage that's the key thing.
Well, guys at home, I want your thoughts. At the start of this programme, by the way, we debated the death penalty and whether or not there should at least be a referendum to bring it back. I was asking you guys on Twitter your thoughts. My inbox was on fire with that. A lot of people saying yes, and specifically on that Twitter poll there, 73% of you said yes, you want it back. 27% of you said no, you don't. Bad news for you, though, because all the time that we're in the European Convention of Human Rights, you can't have it back anywhere. So what you think is not going to move. I've just had a nice response saying it's the best TV debate show you've seen in a very long time.
Superb.
I don't know who that's from, but well done. You are a person
It's really
of
healthy
style.
that people like Peter and I can come on and have different opinions, so thanks, mate.
It is, and it's even better when you respect my time, because that is all. Have a nice night. Nigel is up next. I'll see you tomorrow.
Hello again, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. Some clear spells lingering in the south overnight, leading to a frost in places by dawn. Otherwise, a lot of cloud, actually, and relatively mild, with a breeze coming up from the west-southwest. And a warm front arriving during the night. That warm front will push milder air in from the Atlantic. It will also bring a lot of cloud with it. So any remaining showers in the far north of Scotland easing, but then more persistent damp weather arriving into the north and northwest of Scotland, that reaching western parts of Northern Ireland by the end of the night. A lot of cloud for Northern Ireland, Scotland, Northern England, parts of Wales. But away from these areas, under clear spells, temperatures dropping fairly widely. A few degrees below freezing mostly, but in some shelter spots as low as -7 Celsius, and a few fog patches first thing. But actually, that's where the brightest skies will be across central and southern parts of England. Sunshine remaining in the southeast into the afternoon, but cloud toppling in elsewhere. And that cloud thick enough to give some spots of rain and drizzle over western hills of Wales, the southwest, northwest England, and more persistent rain for the north and west of Scotland at times. But the northeast of Scotland, the cloud will break up well, and here we could see 12 Celsius. Into Friday evening, the cloud remains across the UK, but there'll still be some thinning of the cloud, some breaks appearing through the night, and as a result, a patchy frost couldn't be ruled out across southern parts. But more extensively, we'll see low cloud covering the hills of Wales and the southwest, as well as much of western Scotland, northwest England. So a gloomy start in places on Saturday. It'll take some time for that cloud to lift and break up, and in some places the cloud will remain, particularly over western hills. A few spots of rain where that happens across western Scotland, parts of Wales, for example. But otherwise, some sunny spells coming through, and it's going to be feeling milder on Saturday quite widely. Temperatures of 10 to 13 Celsius.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. B, I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
It's Thursday night, and this is Farage at Large, live from Luton. Please welcome your host, Nigel Farage.
Tonight's Farage at Large is here live in Luton. We're going to talk about the complete failure